right, so I'm a little concerned with etymologies and assumpsit at the moment. Assumpsit was a word I found in the Common Law by Oliver Wendell Holmes. Notice that medieval Latin is listed here. Going back to Nightfall from House MD. And assumpsit, it seems like a simple enough word. Here's arguendo, for the sake of argument. You're assuming arguendo that discovery procedures were correctly followed. The court still cannot grant the defendant's motion to dismiss. So you just assume something's true for the sake of your argument regarding something. If 5 ducks were stolen from a pond, you could assume, arguendo, that those ducks were actually stolen. The report was true, without any evidence corroborating it but gossip. You could go ahead and use gossip to arguendo, to assume arguendo the ducks were actually stolen. And then talk about, well, what if the ducks were stolen? What does it mean to steal a duck? Here's a assumpsit. Law Latin, he undertook. An express or implied promise could be implied, express or implied, not under seal, by which one person undertakes to do some act or pay something to another. How do you imply an act, the promise here? What is a assumpsit? An assumpsit to pay a debt. I don't know. I've always paid him back whenever he lends me something. We have a running tab. There's just an assumpsit. My college roommate, I had a running tab on my college roommate. He always paid me back. He probably paid me back 100 times during 4 years. I'm not sure that 100's right. But somewhere between 50 and 100 times during 4 years, he paid me back after I lent him money. It was always a running tab, usually. So there was always an assumpsit, an express or implied promise, not under seal, by which one person undertakes to do some act or pay something to another. It had been expressed that he would pay me back, but then when it's a running tab, the promise kind of becomes implied based on writing the debt down in the little sheet in my wallet. It was early known as trespass on the case upon promises, but in time came to be designated assumpsit. He assumed or promised. Assumes it. But we got assumpsit. And lies for damages for breach of all contracts, parole or simple, whether written or verbal, express or implied. In its origin, an action of tort. Assumpsit was soon transformed into an action of contract, becoming afterwards a remedy where there was neither tort nor contract. Based on the first only upon an express promise, based at first only on an express promise, it was afterwards supported upon an implied promise, and even upon a fictitious promise. Introduced as a special manifestation of the action on the case, it soon acquired the dignity of a distinct form of action, which superseded debt, became concurrent with account, with case upon a bailment, warranty, and bills of exchange, and competed with equity in the case of the essentially equitable quasi-contracts growing out of the principle of unjust enrichment. understanding between the two of our businesses. Surely, it would be hard to find a better illustration of the flexibility and power of self-development out of the common law. The History of Assumpsit, and 3 select essays in Anglo-American Legal History, 298, 1909. So this is a 1906 Thomas Atkins Street book. He was a Supreme Court of the Philippines Associate Justice after he was a law professor in the United States at Vanderbilt and University of Missouri. The law is always approaching and never reaching consistency. It is forever adopting new principles from life at one end, and it always retains old ones from history at the other, which have not yet been absorbed. And sometimes you can go back in history and find a principle and kind of absorb it into a statute that, it might be analogous to the historical context, so which have not yet been absorbed or sloughed off. And sometimes we don't slough off historical context in our current law, but eventually we do, maybe. It will become entirely consistent. The common law will become entirely consistent only when it ceases to grow. And then